What's up, guys? Jason of New Age Revolution down here in the cave for another video. Today we are going to talk about memories of Corporal Kirchner. Corporal Kirchner passed away December 22nd at age 64. And so like when any of our childhood heroes pass away, especially if they are rubberized in LJN form. I like to talk a little bit about them. The other day I was thinking, and as I was trying to fall asleep, I was trying to count in my head how many LJN figures are still alive. And without looking at the shelf and making an official count, we're somewhere in the 20s. And I believe there were like 65, 66 figures, something like that. We're in the 20s, low to mid 20s of figures still alive. And that's a weird thought. So we'll talk a little bit about Corporal Kirchner as childhood memories of him as a wrestler. And then, of course, we'll talk about the LJN figure and my experience with that figure, which was strange. It was unique. Unique to me and to some of you. When I would talk about it in the past, some of you would also say, oh, yeah, Corporal Kirchner was like a main eventer. Kirchner began in the WWF as a jobber, as an enhancement worker named R.T. Reynolds. And as you can see, it's a lot different look than Corporal Kirchner. And you take a look at that guy and you go, that's not gonna work, you know. But for some reason, R.T. Reynolds, whether he performed well as an enhancement worker or whatever, he became Corporal Kirchner. He started, it was like late 84 as R.T. Reynolds, and then into 85, we get Kirchner. Let's see if I can get an official date. He was with the WWF from 84 to 87. Right, so late 84, early 85, we've got R.T. Reynolds, and then we start seeing these vignettes, right? These vignettes of this, this guy from the 82nd Airborne swimming through swamps with a knife in his mouth, Rambo, Sergeant Slaughter style. And in fact, a lot of people say or believe that Corporal Kirchner was a replacement for Sergeant Slaughter. And I don't know. Look, when it comes to stuff like that, as fans and smarks, we have all different kinds of thoughts and opinions. And honestly, does it make sense that Corporal Kirchner was a Sergeant Slaughter replacement? Sure, it makes sense. But until Vince McMahon or Pat Patterson or George Scott or whoever comes on here, maybe not Patterson, but George Scott comes on here and says, yep, that was the plan. Corporal Kirchner was going to be a new Sergeant Slaughter. Then it's all just, it's all just our opinions. Like I said, it makes sense. Sergeant Slaughter left, and the WWF had a big gap in their, American hero role. And Slaughter continued on, so it wasn't like Slaughter just disappeared. I mean, he became probably even... Well, he became as big, I think, with G.I. Joe and, some stuff in the AWA. And then as he's gone, and he's gone and forgotten for a little while. I mean, he didn't, Corporal Kirchner didn't come in like the week Slaughter left. It was months and months. But then we start seeing this guy who's going to come in and be the American hero, U.S. military representative, and he's going to be taking on, the anti-Americans, the Nikolai Volkovs and the Iron Sheiks, which was Slaughter's role, So he comes in, and we get Corporal Kirchner, and of course he's never elevated to the Sergeant Slaughter level. He's a mid-carder, and we get some classic battles like I think it was the WrestleMania 2 flag match between Corporal Kirchner and Nikolai Volkov. Kirchner was always on Superstars. He was always on Saturday Night's Main Event. And as always, you get a push and you win some matches, and then you start to you start to go down. And in fact, I think Kirchner even played the dreaded 6-man tag team role on Superstars, where they would put Kirchner with Steve Lombardi and Aldo Montoya or whatever, Mario Mancini, and they would lose to a 6-man. Kirchner would never get the pin, of course, or take the pin. But sometimes you saw that, jobber to the stars type of role. And for me it was he was fine. He's not the most memorable on-screen character for my childhood at all. But then, after leaving the WWF, Kirchner went on to play some very interesting roles in Texas, I believe they said, and I think he did some time in Japan, the FMW. So he was in Stampede after WWF, going under. In September '87, he debuted in Stampede, which is Stu Hart's federation, and his name was Colonel Kirchner. He left Stampede in '87. Then he goes to New Japan, where he plays probably his coolest gimmick. So he does New Japan. He does the UWF briefly. That weird Sergeant Slaughter, Tito Santana federation. Then he's in a group called Wing. Considered by many to be the toughest hardcore wrestler in Wing. I don't know. While in Japan, he had a fight with American Wrestling Association wrestler Johnny Stewart, breaking Stewart's jaw and causing Stewart to leave the tour prematurely. He was later arrested and jailed for 6 months following an attempted assault by a fan, which left the fan with several facial lacerations. And then he went to International Wrestling in Japan, IWA, Frontier Martial Arts he was in. Wrestling his final match in 2010, which is a heck of a lot later than I would have expected. Anyway, so we had all these strange stops after the WWF, and never really did anything again with the WWF. We never saw him in those gimmick battle royals or anything like that. But to me, his coolest character after Corporal Kirchner was Leatherface. He portrayed Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I thought that was pretty cool. That was Japan, and then other places that he went as well. And then Corporal Kirchner disappeared for the most part. I never saw him at fan fests and big wrestling conventions until WWE reported that he had died several years ago. They put it on their website that Corporal Kirchner had died several years ago. And Corporal Kirchner had to respond and say, I'm not dead. And then that kind of reboosted his name on the fan fest market. So then you start seeing Corporal Kirchner show up at conventions with a very interesting look. It doesn't quite look like our Corporal Kirchner of old, but he aged, and then that was it. And then I read on December 22nd that he had passed away. And that's another one of our Saturday morning TV icons gone. Now, Corporal Kirchner is the only figure to have three slightly different LJN figures. Yes, we've got Andre the Giant, but those aren't slightly different. They're totally different characters. These are three slightly different variants of Corporal Kirchner. And the most common one, I think the one that we probably all had, was the baby face Corporal Kirchner with no facial hair. and we've talked about this before. Then we get Corporal Kirchner number 2 with stubble, and I don't know if you can see, but it's stubble that is unpainted. So you have Corporal Kirchner with unpainted stubble, and then the rarest of them all is the bearded Corporal Kirchner with the full beard. And yes, he did have some appearances. See, that's an interesting thing. Like, he was not bearded for a significant amount of time in the WWF. So, I don't know why a figure would get this look. He was bearded at a time, but it was so brief. So anyway, we've got 3 Corporal Kirchner figures, and I, of course, had, one of them as a kid, because as a 12-year-old, why in the world would you spend $7.99 on, or have your mother spend $7.99 on 3 figures just to get stubble Kirchner? You're not. So I had one. And I probably in the beginning of the LJN years, he was Corporal Kirchner, as we all know and love him. But then my strange little mind just started doing strange little things. And I put Corporal Kirchner in a dominating 6-man faction. And I don't know why. He teamed with S.D. Jones, who was renamed Brickhouse Brown. Okay, now Brickhouse Brown was a WCCW character, and I just liked the name. So I made S.D. Jones Brickhouse Brown and teamed him with Corporal Kirchner, and then added Don Morocco. But Don Morocco was not Don Morocco. Don Morocco was Mike Rotundo. And in fact, I remember as a kid, because back in the day, Mike Rotundo had 2 names, right? When he was in the WWF, he was Mike Rotundo. And then when he went to like Florida and the NWA, he was Mike Rotunda with an A. And I wanted to call him Rotunda. So in my federation, Corporal Kirchner, who was sort of renamed Corporal Mike Kirchner in my federation, Corporal Mike Kirchner, Brickhouse Brown, and Mike Rotunda, Don Morocco, were a dominant 6-man force. So dominant that they often held the WWF LJN Tag Team Championships. Now, I had a weird rule back then, which ended up being like the Freebird rule, which I didn't know at the time, but any 2 combinations of that 6-man, when they were tag team champions, could defend the belts, right? So Brickhouse could team up with Kirchner, Brickhouse could team up with Rotunda, and as long as they were tag team champions, they could defend the belts, any faction, any group they wanted. Great. From the mind, from the 12-year-old genius, sociopathic mind of kid me. And a huge run. And I can't remember, specifically, but I think, good old Corporal Mike Kirchner had an Intercontinental title run. Now that 6-man were bad guys, by the way. So Kirchner, Brickhouse Brown, and Mike Rotunda were bad guys. And so, Corporal Kirchner. And to this day, this is one of my favorite play poses for the LJNs. This is actually a great figure for play. Really great figure. And so, back then, you would use a figure often if they had great play. And that's why I didn't want to just cast aside S.D. Jones, because he has the best LJN play pose, in my opinion. Right? So, and this is good too. And I know the kids of today are like, what are you going to do with that arm? It just sits there. It's not articulated in 79 different spots. It's imagination, folks. It's imagination. And this was a great play pose. And so I used this figure a lot. And, like I said, I created one of the more unique and memorable groups using Corporal Kirchner and the 2 other guys I mentioned. And like I said, sadly, he passed away December 22nd. And, I think my love of his LJN figure certainly outweighs the impact that he had on me as a wrestler. in the WWF, but obviously a character of our past. Like I said, an image from Saturday Morning Wrestling, an image from Saturday night's main event, WrestleMania 2, and so on. Corporal Kirchner. So that's that, ladies and gentlemen. Corporal Mike Kirchner passing away at 62 years old, a few days before Christmas 2021. And so all three of these figures will go back on the shelf. Coming up, we're going to do a kind of just a quick overview of where I went during the break and some of the stuff that people sent me, some of the emails. So basically, I want to say hello to a few people. I want to show off some things that came in the mail, and talk about a few emails that were sent, a few words of encouragement, things like that. We'll do that. And then now that Christmas has ended, in fact, right now it's New Year's Eve. Now that Christmas has ended again, I would like to do whatever happened to Christmas. And I think you'll be surprised by the content. It's different. Christmas is different. We know that. Christmas is always different when we're adults. But it's still different. Something is missing for me. And hopefully when I sit down to start talking to you, I'll be able to verbalize my thoughts. But something's missing. Something is missing. And I don't know what it is, but I think I noticed it more than ever this year. So we'll talk about that. Whatever happened at Christmas. And then we'll go on and on and on with the channel. That's about it. Thank you all for hanging out. Happy New Year. I'd like to come back down here tomorrow and do that sort of shout-out video. And so I'll see you on New Year's Day. We'll ring in the new year together. The hair growth is going strong. Now, I did get a trim. I did get the sides trimmed. But you know what? That plays no role in the hair growth because this is going to grow in so fast. And so I have to trim this in the back down this, down like kind of like that. I have to trim that, or else this will just like go out here while this is still not even close to long. So I have to probably shave this down for probably the next 3 or 4 months, and then I'll just let it go because it'll be a little bit more even. So hair growth is going to start officially tomorrow. It started officially already, but we're going to track it starting officially tomorrow. Happy New Year. We'll see y'all again. Good night now.